I've always loved the quiet of early mornings. There's a peace to it, world still asleep, the sun just beginning to peek through the curtains, and the gentle hum of the kettle on the stove. Most mornings, I'd sit at my kitchen table, hands wrapped around a warm mug of coffee, thinking about the day ahead or reminiscing about memories from years gone by. But that morning was different. The phone rang, insistent, slicing through the silence. I glanced at the clock. 6:12 a.m. My heart skipped. No one ever calls this early. Not unless it's important. Not unless it's bad news. I reached for the phone, my hands already trembling. The caller ID flashed my grandson's name. My sweet boy. He never calls this early. Instantly, 1,000 worries flooded my mind. Was he hurt? Was something wrong with his parents? Had there been an accident? I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. Hello, sweetheart. Is everything all right? There was a pause. I could hear him breathing, shaky and uneven. Then, in a voice so small I barely recognized it, he whispered, Grandma, I need to tell you something. Please, don't hang up. My heart pounded in my chest. I tried to sound calm, but I could feel the fear rising inside me. You're scaring me, honey. What's happened? He hesitated, and in that moment, I knew whatever he was about to say would change everything. What he told me next would shatter everything. I thought I knew about my family. In that instant, my world tilted, and nothing would ever be the same again. Have you ever received a call that changed your life in a single moment? Stay with me, because what happened next is something I never could have imagined. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, straining to hear every word, every breath. My grandson's voice was so fragile, so unlike the confident young man I'd watched grow up. I could hear the fear in him, and it sent a chill straight through me. Grandma, I don't know what to do, he said, his words tumbling out in a rush. I'm so sorry. I didn't know who else to call. My mind raced. I tried to keep my voice steady, to be the calm in his storm. It's all right, sweetheart. Just tell me what's happened. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together. There was a long pause. I could hear him sniffling, trying to hold back tears. I messed up, Grandma. I really messed up. And now I think I'm in trouble. Real trouble. I felt my stomach twist. I wanted to reach through the phone and hold him, to tell him everything would be okay. But I didn't even know what everything was yet. Take a deep breath, honey. Start from the beginning. I'm here, I promise. I'm not going anywhere. He took a shaky breath. It's about Dad, he whispered, his voice barely audible. I found something. Something I wasn't supposed to see. My heart skipped. His father, me son. Memories flashed through my mind. Birthday parties, family dinners, the way my son used to laugh when he was a boy. What did you find? I asked, my voice trembling now, too. He hesitated, and I could almost feel the weight of his fear through the phone. I was looking for my old yearbook in the attic, and I found the box. It was hidden behind some old suitcases. I opened it, and, Grandma, there were papers, letters, and money. A lot of money. And there was a letter with my name on it, but it wasn't from Dad. It was from someone I've never heard of. I felt the room spin. What did the letter say? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He swallowed hard. It said that Dad isn't who he says he is, that he did something bad a long time ago, and that if anyone ever found out, it would ruin everything. Grandma, I don't understand. I don't know what to do. I closed my eyes, trying to steady myself. My son, with secrets, with money hidden away, and letters from strangers. It didn't make sense. Did you talk to your dad about it? I asked gently. He shook his head, and I could hear the panic rising in his voice. No, I can't. What if he gets mad? What if it's true? I'm scared, Grandma. I'm really scared. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to sound strong for him, even as my own fears threatened to overwhelm me. Listen to me, sweetheart. You did the right thing by calling me. We'll figure this out together, I promise. But you need to stay calm, okay? Don't say anything to your dad yet. Let me come over, and we'll look at everything together. He let out a shaky sigh of relief. Thank you, Grandma. I didn't know who else to trust. His words broke my heart. How had things gotten to this point? How had my family become a place where secrets and fear lived in the shadows? I love you, honey. I'm on my way. Just hang tight, and don't worry, we'll get through this. As I hung up the phone, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely set it down. My mind was spinning with questions. What could my son possibly be hiding? What was in those letters? And who was the stranger who wrote to my grandson? I grabbed my coat and my purse, barely remembering to lock the door behind me. The drive to their house felt endless. Every red light a fresh wave of anxiety. I replayed the conversation over and over in my mind, searching for clues, for anything that might make sense of this nightmare. I thought about my son, his kindness, his laughter, the way he always tried to do the right thing. But now, doubt crept in. Had I missed something? Had there always been secrets lurking beneath the surface? By the time I pulled into their driveway, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I didn't know what I was about to walk into. I didn't know what I would find in that attic, or what the truth would do to my family, but I knew one thing. I had to protect my grandson, no matter what. Even if it meant uncovering secrets I wasn't ready to face. What I found in that attic would change everything, and as I climbed those stairs, I had no idea just how deep the betrayal would go. I don't remember getting out of the car, or even walking up the steps to their front door. My mind was a blur, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear my own thoughts. All I knew was that my grandson needed me, and nothing else mattered. He opened the door before I could even knock. His face was pale, eyes red from crying, and he looked so much younger than his 17 years. I pulled him into my arms, holding him tight, feeling his body tremble against mine. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm here now," I whispered, stroking his hair the way I used to when he was little. "We'll figure this out together." He nodded, but I could feel the tension in his shoulders, the fear that hadn't left him since he made that call. I led him to the kitchen, sat him down at the table, and poured him a glass of water. My hands shook as I set it in front of him. "Tell me everything. From the beginning," I said gently, trying to keep my own panic at bay. "Don't leave anything out." He took a shaky breath and started from the tofu he'd gone up to the attic looking for his yearbook. How he'd found the box, the money, the letters. He described the envelope with his name on it, the unfamiliar handwriting, the words that made no sense, as he spoke. I tried to listen calmly, but inside, my mind was racing. What could my son possibly be hiding? Was it a mistake, a misunderstanding, or was there something darker, something I'd never imagined? I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You did the right thing telling me. I know you're scared, but you're not alone in this." He looked at me, his eyes wide and searching. "What do we do now, Grandma? Should we tell Dad?" I hesitated. The thought of confronting my son, his father, filled me with dread. What if it was all a misunderstanding? What if it wasn't? I didn't want to believe he was capable of anything truly terrible, but the fear in my grandson's eyes told me this was serious. "Let's look at the box together first," I said. "We need to know exactly what we're dealing with before we say anything." He nodded, relief flickering across his face. I could see how much he needed someone to take charge, to make sense of the chaos swirling around him. We climbed the narrow stairs to the attic, the air thick with dust and old memories. He led me to the far corner, where the box sat half hidden behind a stack of suitcases. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside, I saw the bundles of cash, the stack of letters, and the envelope with my grandson's name. I picked it up, my heart pounding. The handwriting was unfamiliar, elegant, almost old-fashioned. I opened it and began to read. The words blurred before my eyes. The letter spoke of secrets, of debts owed, of a past that wouldn't stay buried. It hinted at something my son had done, something that, if revealed, would destroy our family. I felt dizzy, my mind reeling. I wanted to believe it was a cruel joke, a mistake, but the fear in my grandson's eyes told me otherwise. We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of the truth pressing down on us. Finally, I spoke. "We need to talk to your father." I said quietly, but we have to be careful. We don't know how he'll react. Just then, I heard the front door slam. My son's voice echoed up the stairs. Mom, what are you doing here? My heart leaped into my throat. I quickly tucked the letter back into the box and closed the lid. I glanced at my grandson, who looked like he might bolt at any second. We'll handle this together, I whispered, squeezing his hand. We went downstairs, trying to act normal. My son stood in the hallway, his face a mixture of surprise and suspicion. Everything okay? He asked, looking from me to his son and back again. I forced a smile. I just stopped by to see my favorite boys. Is that so strange? He laughed, but there was an edge to it. You picked a good day. I could use some company. I watched him carefully, searching his face for any sign of guilt or fear. But he was as calm as ever, moving around the kitchen, making small talk. My grandson sat quietly, barely touching his water. Finally, my son turned to him. You all right, buddy? You look like you've seen a ghost. My grandson glanced at me, then back at his father. I'm fine. Just tired, I guess. I could see the tension between them, the unspoken questions hanging in the air. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I knew I had to be careful. One wrong move, and everything could fall apart. Later, when my son stepped outside to take a phone call, I turned to my grandson. We need to be smart about this, I whispered. We can't let him know what we found until we understand more. Do you trust me? He nodded, his eyes shining with tears. I trust you, Grandma. I don't know what to believe anymore. I hugged him tight, my own heart breaking. How had it come to this? How had my family become a place of secrets and fear? As the day wore on, the tension in the house grew. My son was distracted, snapping at small things, pacing the kitchen. My grandson barely spoke, his eyes glued to the floor. When my daughter-in-law came home, she immediately sensed something was wrong. What's going on? She asked, looking from me to her husband to her son. My son brushed her off. Nothing, just a long day. But she wasn't convinced. She pulled me aside in the hallway. Is everything all right, Mom? You look worried. I hesitated, torn between protecting my grandson's secret and my own growing fear. I'm just tired, dear. Maybe I'm overthinking things. She frowned, clearly unconvinced. If something's wrong, you'll tell me, right? I nodded, but inside, I was screaming. I didn't know who to trust or what to do next. That night, as I lay in the guest room, I replayed the day's events over and over in my mind. My protective instincts warred with my confusion and fear. I wanted to believe in my son, to trust that he was the man I'd always known. But the evidence in that box, the fear in my grandson's eyes, it was impossible to ignore. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how I would ever find the strength to face what was coming. I knew one thing for certain. I would do anything to protect my grandson, even if it meant tearing my family apart. And as I drifted into a restless sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The real storm was still to come. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the box, the money, the letter with my grandson's name. I heard his trembling voice, felt the weight of his fear. I kept asking myself, what could my son possibly be hiding? What had he done that was so terrible, so dangerous, that it had to be buried in the attic, hidden from everyone even his own family? By morning, I knew I couldn't just sit and wait for answers. I had to find them myself. I woke early, before anyone else was up. The house was silent except for the soft ticking of the kitchen clock. I tiptoed upstairs to the attic, careful not to wake my grandson or my son. The box was right where we'd left it, tucked behind the suitcases. I opened it again, this time determined to read every letter, every scrap of paper, until I understood the truth. The first few letters were old-some, dated back nearly 20 years. They were written in the same elegant, unfamiliar handwriting as the letter addressed to my grandson. The tone was desperate, pleading. The writer begged for forgiveness, hinted at a debt that could never be repaid, and warned of consequences if the truth ever came out. One letter, dated just a few months after my grandson was born, caught my eye. It mentioned my son by name. David, you promised me this would never come to light. You swore you'd protect him, no matter what. If anyone finds out, it will destroy us all. My hands shook as I read those words. Who was this person? What secret were they so desperate to keep? And what did it have to do with my grandson? I dug deeper, searching for clues. There were bank statements, receipts for large cash withdrawals, and a faded photograph of a woman I didn't recognize. She looked young, maybe in her 20s, with dark hair and sad eyes. On the back, in the same handwriting, was a single word: forgive. I stared at the photo, my mind racing. Was this the letter writer? What was her connection to my son and to my grandson? I heard footsteps on the stairs and quickly closed the box, shoving it back into its hiding place. My grandson appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. Couldn't sleep either, he asked softly. I shook my head. No, sweetheart. There's too much on my mind. He sat beside me, his face pale and drawn. Did you find anything else? I hesitated, not wanting to scare him, but I knew I couldn't keep him in the dark. There are more letters, and a picture of a woman. I don't know who she is, but I think she's important. He nodded, biting his lip. Do you think Dad's in trouble? I sighed, wishing I had an answer. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. We spent the morning in a strange, tense silence. My son acted as if nothing was wrong, but I could see the strain in his eyes, the way he avoided looking at me for too long. My daughter-in-law was quiet, watching us all with growing suspicion. At lunch, the tension finally boiled over. My son snapped at my grandson for not clearing his plate, and my grandson shot back with a bitterness I'd never heard before. Why do you care? You never notice anything anyway. My son's face darkened. Watch your tone. My daughter-in-law intervened, her voice sharp. What is going on with you two? You've both been acting strange since yesterday. I tried to smooth things over. It's just a rough week. We're all a little on edge, but the damage was done. The air was thick with unspoken accusations, old wounds reopening. I could see it in my son's iced fear that we knew something, the anger that we might be judging him. That afternoon, I decided to do some digging of my own. While my son was out running errands, I searched his office. I felt guilty, but I told myself I was doing it for my grandson, for the family. I found more bank statements, all with large, unexplained withdrawals. There were also several envelopes addressed to A.P.O. box in another city. I copied down the address, my hands shaking. What was my son hiding? Was he being blackmailed? Was he supporting someone in secret? I called an old friend of mine, Margaret, who'd worked at the local bank for years. I trusted her with my life. Margaret, I need a favor, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Can you look up some information for me? It's about David. She hesitated, but agreed. Of course, but is everything all right? I swallowed hard. I'm not sure. I just need to know if he's in trouble. She promised to call me back as soon as she found anything. That evening, my daughter-in-law cornered me in the kitchen. Mom, I know something's wrong. You're not yourself. Please, tell me what's going on. I looked at her, torn. She deserved the truth, but I didn't want to drag her into this mess until I knew more. I'm worried about David, I admitted. I think he's hiding something. Something big. Her face went pale. Do you think he's having an affair? The thought hadn't even crossed my mind, but now I wondered, was that what all the secrecy was about? The money, the letters, the photograph. I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm going to find out. She nodded, tears in her eyes. If you need help, I'm here. That night, Margaret called me back. Your son's been making regular cash withdrawals for years, she said quietly. Always the same amount, always on the same day of the month. And the Pew Bucks. It's registered to a woman named Evelyn Carter. The name meant nothing to me, but I thanked her and hung up, my mind spinning. Who was Evelyn Carter? Was she the woman in the photograph? Was she the one writing the letters? I decided to confront my son. I waited until everyone else was asleep, then knocked on his office door. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice trembling. He looked up startled. "Of course, Mom. What's going on?" I took a deep breath. "I know about the money, the letters, the P.O. box. Who is Evelyn Carter?" His face went white. For a moment, I thought he might deny everything, but then he slumped in his chair, defeated. "It's not what you think," he said quietly. "Then tell me what it is." I pressed. He hesitated, then began to speak. "Years ago, before I met Linda, I was involved with someone, Evelyn. She got pregnant, but she never told me until after the baby was born. She said she didn't want anything from me, but then, things changed. She needed help. Money. I've been supporting her ever since." I stared at him, stunned. "Does Linda know?" He shook his head. "No, no one does. I thought I could keep it separate, keep it from affecting our family. But then Evelyn got sick. She needed more money. I didn't know what else to do." I sat down, my legs suddenly weak. "And the letters, the one to your son." He looked away. "Evelyn wanted him to know the truth. She wrote that letter in case something happened to her. I never meant for him to find it." I felt a wave of anger and sadness wash over me. "You should have told us. You should have told him." He buried his face in his hands. "I know. I was scared. I didn't want to lose everything. I left him there, alone with his guilt." I went upstairs to check on my grandson. He was sitting on his bed, staring at the letter. "Did you talk to Dad?" he asked. I nodded. He told me everything. About Evelyn, about the other family. He looked at me, tears streaming down his face. "Does that mean I have a brother or a sister?" I hugged him tight. "I don't know, sweetheart, but we'll find out together." The next morning, the house was filled with tension. My son avoided everyone. My daughter-in-law was in tears, and my grandson barely spoke. The truth had come out, but it had only raised more questions. I decided to call Evelyn. I found her number in one of the letters and dialed, my hands shaking. A woman answered, her voice weak but kind. "Hello, Evelyn. My name is Margaret. I'm David's mother." There was a long pause. "I was wondering when you'd call." We talked for nearly an hour. She told me about her life, her illness, her regrets. She told me about her child, a daughter, now 15, who had always wondered about her father. As I hung up the phone, I realized the web of secrets was even more tangled than I'd imagined. My family was forever changed, and I didn't know if we'd ever recover. But what I discovered next made me question everything I thought I knew about loyalty, forgiveness, and the true meaning of family. Because just when I thought the worst was over, another secret was about to come to light, one that would shake us all to our core. I sat at the kitchen table long after the house had gone quiet. The only sound, the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant ticking of the old wall clock. My hands were wrapped around a mug of tea I'd forgotten to drink, the warmth long since faded. My mind was a storm of memories, regrets, and questions swirling so fast I could barely keep up. How had it come to this? My son, the boy I'd raised to be honest and kind, had hidden a second family for nearly 2 decades. My grandson, the child I'd loved since the day he was born, was now caught in a web of secrets and lies he never asked for. And me sitting here, feeling helpless, torn between protecting the people I love and exposing the truth that could tear us all apart. I thought about the conversation with Evelyn. Her voice had been gentle, but tired. She'd told me about her daughter, about the years of silence, about the hope that one day the truth would come out and her child would know her father. I could hear the pain in her words, the longing for a family she'd never truly had. And then there was my daughter-in-law, Linda. She'd sensed something was wrong. For weeks, maybe months, I saw the way she looked at David, now confused, hurt, suspicious. She deserved the truth, didn't she? Didn't they all? But what about my grandson? He was so young, so vulnerable. He'd already lost his innocence, his trust in the people who were supposed to protect him. If I confronted David in front of everyone, if I forced the truth into the open, would I be protecting my grandson or destroying what little peace he had left? I closed my eyes, searching for answers. I remembered the way my own mother had handled family secrets, always with silence, always with shame. I'd promised myself I'd be different. I'd promised I'd never let fear dictate my choices. But now, fear was all I had. I heard a soft knock at the door. My grandson stood in the hallway, his face pale in the dim light. "Can't sleep?" I asked gently. He shook his head. "I keep thinking about Dad. About that girl. My sister, I guess." I motioned for him to sit beside me. He did, curling up in the chair, knees pulled to his chest. "Do you want to meet her?" I asked quietly. He shrugged. "I don't know. I feel like everything I thought I knew is gone, like our family isn't real anymore." I reached for his hand, squeezing it tight. "Families are messy, sweetheart. We all make mistakes, but love doesn't disappear just because the truth is hard." He looked at me, tears brimming in his eyes. "What are you going to do, Grandma?" That was the question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? I thought about confronting David in front of everyone, forcing him to admit the truth. I imagined the anger, the tears, the accusations. I saw Linda's heartbreak, my grandson's pain, the shattering of everything we'd built. But I also thought about the cost of silence. If I kept this secret, if I let David keep living this lie, what would that teach my grandson? That it's better to hide from the truth than to face it. That love means protecting people from pain, even if it means living a lie. I realized, in that moment, that I couldn't make this decision for everyone, but I could make it for myself. I could choose honesty, even if it hurt. I could choose to break the cycle of silence that had haunted my family for generations. I turned to my grandson, brushing a tear from his cheek. "I think it's time for the truth, sweetheart. I think it's time we stop pretending everything is okay." He nodded, a look of relief and fear mingling on his face. "Will you be with me? Always," I promised. "No matter what happens." The next morning, I woke before dawn. I sat in the living room, waiting for the sun to rise, for the house to stir. My heart was pounding, but I felt a strange sense of calm. I knew what I had to do. When David came downstairs, I asked him to sit with me. Linda joined us, sensing the gravity in my voice. My grandson hovered in the doorway, his eyes wide and anxious. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "There's something we need to talk about, something that can't wait any longer." David looked at me, fear flickering in his eyes. Linda reached for his hand, her own trembling. I looked at my family, the people I loved most in the world, and I spoke the truth. "David, I know about Evelyn. I know about your daughter. And I know about the years of secrets and lies. It's time to stop hiding. It's time to be honest with yourself, with Linda, with your son." The room went silent. David's face crumpled, tears streaming down his cheeks. Linda gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. My grandson stared at his father, waiting for answers. David tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Finally, he managed. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt any of you." Linda's voice was barely a whisper. "How could you keep this from me, from us?" He shook his head, sobbing. "I was scared. I thought I could protect you. I thought I could fix it on my own." I reached for Linda's hand, for my grandson's. "We can't change the past, but we can choose what we do now. We can choose honesty. We can choose to heal." In that moment, I realized something I'd always known, deep down. The truth doesn't destroy familiar secrets do. And while the road ahead would be hard, it was the only way forward. I looked at my grandson, at the pain and hope in his eyes, and I made a silent promise. I would stand by him, by all of them, no matter what came next. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is face the truth and trust that love will be enough to carry you through. The morning air was heavy, thick with the kind of tension that makes every sound sharper, every movement more deliberate. I could feel it in my bones as I sat at the kitchen table, waiting for David to come downstairs. My grandson hovered in the hallway, his face pale, his eyes darting between me and the staircase. Linda sat across from me, her hands wrapped tightly around a mug of coffee she hadn't touched. I'd rehearsed what I was going to say 100 times in my head, but now that the moment was here, My mind felt blank. All I knew was that the time for secrets was over. David finally appeared. His hair still damp from the shower. His face drawn and tired. He paused when he saw us all gathered, sensing immediately that something was wrong. "Is everything okay?" he asked, his voice uncertain. I looked at him. My son, the boy I'd raised, the man I thought I knew. I saw the lines of worry etched into his face, the way his shoulders slumped as if he was carrying the weight of the world. And maybe he was. "David, sit down," I said quietly, but firmly. He hesitated, glancing at Linda, then at his son, before finally pulling out a chair and sitting down. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I took a deep breath, feeling my heart hammering in my chest. "We need to talk, all of us." David's eyes flickered with fear. "About what?" I didn't look away. "About Evelyn, about your daughter, about the secrets you've been keeping from your family." For a moment, no one moved. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. Then, slowly, David's face crumpled. He looked down at his hands, unable to meet any of our eyes. Linda's voice was barely a whisper. "Is it true, David? Do you have another child?" He nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "Yes, her name is Emily. She's 15. Linda's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. How could you keep this from me, from us?" David's voice broke. "I was scared, Linda. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought I could handle it on my own. I thought I could protect you from it." Linda shook her head, her voice trembling with anger and pain. "Protect me? You lied to me. For years, you let me build a life with you, raise a family, and all this time you were hiding another child, another woman." David reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." My grandson sat rigid, his fists clenched in his lap. "So, what am I supposed to do? Just pretend I don't have a sister? Pretend none of this matters?" David turned to him, his eyes pleading. "I wanted to tell you. I didn't know how. I was afraid you'd hate me." My grandson's voice was sharp, raw. "I don't hate you. I just don't know who you are anymore." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. I felt my own anger rising, not just at David, but at myself, not seeing the signs, for letting things get this far. I leaned forward, my voice trembling but strong. "David, I love you. I always have. But love doesn't mean turning a blind eye to the truth. You've hurt your family, you've hurt your son, and you've hurt yourself." He looked at me, tears streaming down his face. "I know, Mom. I know I messed up. I didn't want to lose everything." Linda's anger flared. "You already have. You lost my trust. You lost the right to keep secrets from us. How many times did I ask you if something was wrong? How many times did you lie to my face?" David buried his face in his hands, sobbing. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I reached across the table, placing my hand over his. "Sorry isn't enough, David. Not this time. You need to make this right. You need to face what you've done." He nodded, broken. "I will. I promise." The room was silent for a long moment. Then, my grandson spoke, his voice small and uncertain. "What happens now?" I looked at him, at Linda, at David. I saw the pain in their eyes, the fear, the uncertainty. But I also saw something else, a glimmer of hope, a chance for healing. If only we were brave enough to take it. "We move forward," I said softly. "We face the truth, together. We talk to Emily. We talk to Evelyn. We try to make amends. It won't be easy. It won't be quick. But it's the only way." Linda wiped her eyes, her voice shaky but determined. "I want to meet her. I want to know the truth, all of it." David nodded, his voice barely audible. "I'll arrange it. I'll do whatever it takes." My grandson looked at me, his eyes searching. "Will you be there, Grandma?" I smiled through my tears. "Always, sweetheart, always." But as the conversation continued, old wounds began to surface. Linda brought up the years of distance, the times David had been absent or distracted. My grandson remembered the broken promises, the missed games, the nights he'd waited for his father to come home. David tried to explain, to apologize, but the pain was too deep, the scars too old. The confrontation became a reckoning not just for the secret he'd kept, but for all the ways he'd failed, the people who loved him. Linda's voice was sharp, her anger finally boiling over. You always put yourself first, David. Even now, you're trying to make this about you. What about us? What about the family you already had? David shook his head, defeated. I know, I've been selfish. I didn't know how to fix it. I stepped in, my voice gentle but firm. You start by telling the truth, by listening, by being here, really being here, for your family. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I want to make things right. The conversation went on, for hours, emotions running high, voices raised and lowered, tears shed and comfort given. By the end, we were all exhausted, but something had shifted. The truth was out. The wounds were raw, but they were finally exposed to the light dot as the sun set, casting long shadows across the kitchen. I looked at my Famila Brocken, hurting, but still together. I knew the road ahead would be hard. There would be more pain, more anger, more tears, but there would also be healing, if we were willing to fight for it. I stood up, my legs shaky but strong. We'll get through this, one day at a time, together. David looked at me, gratitude and regret mingling in his eyes. Thank you, Ma, for not giving up on me. I hugged him, holding him tight. I never will, but you have to do your part now. No more secrets, no more lies. He nodded, a new resolve in his voice. No more, I promise. As I held my son, my daughter-in-law, and my grandson close, I felt the weight of the past begin to lift. The confrontation had been painful, but it was necessary. The only way forward was through the truth. But even as I tried to find hope, I couldn't shake the feeling that there were still more secrets waiting to be uncovered, more wounds that needed to heal. The journey wasn't over, not by a long shot. And as I looked into my grandson's eyes, I made another silent promise. I would be there for him. For all of them. No matter what came next. Because that's what family is. Not perfect, not easy, but worth fighting for. He never calls this early, but when my grandson's voice trembled on the phone, I knew something was wrong. The house was still dark, the sun not yet risen, but the world had already shifted. I sat on the edge of my bed, the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the silence that followed his words. My heart pounded, each beat echoing the fear and confusion in his voice. I wanted to reach through the line, to hold him, to make it all right, but I couldn't. Not this time. By the time I arrived at my daughter's house, the confrontation had already happened. The front door was ajar, voices spilling out into the cold morning air, sharp, brittle, and raw. I hesitated on the porch, my hand hovering over the doorknob, before pushing inside. The living room was a battlefield. My daughter, Anna, stood rigid by the fireplace, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her husband, Mark, paced back and forth, his face flushed with anger. My grandson, Jamie, sat hunched on the sofa, his eyes red and swollen, his hands twisting in his lap. The air was thick with accusation and hurt. No one noticed me at first. I watched as Anna's voice rose, trembling with fury and pain. How could you keep this from us, Jamie? How long have you been lying? Jamie's voice was barely a whisper. I wasn't lying. I didn't know how to tell you. Mark stopped pacing, turning to face his son. You should have trusted us. We're your family. Jamie flinched, shrinking into the cushions. I wanted to go to him, to shield him from their words, but I was frozen, caught between my daughter's anger and my grandson's shame. Finally, Anna noticed me. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I saw the little girl. She used to be scared, uncertain, looking to me for answers. Mom, she said, her voice cracking. Did you know about this? The question hung in the air, heavy and accusing. I shook my head, unable to speak. I hadn't known, but now, standing in the wreckage of their trust, I wondered if I should have. The argument splintered, each word driving us further apart. Mark blamed Jamie. Anna blamed herself. Jamie blamed everyone. I tried to mediate, to soothe, but my words fell flat, lost in the storm of emotion. That as the morning wore on, the family fractured. Mark stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Anna retreated to the kitchen, her sobs muffled by the closed door. Jamie sat alone, staring at the floor, his shoulders shaking. I sat beside him, placing a tentative hand on his back. He didn't pull away, but he didn't look at me either. We sat in silence, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on us. Guilt gnawed at me. I should have seen this coming. I should have been there for him. But I'd been so caught up in my own life, my own worries, that I'd missed the signs. Now, all I could do was sit with him in the aftermath. The hours passed in a blur. Family members called, each conversation a minefield. Some took Jamie's side, insisting he needed understanding and support. Others sided with Anna and Mark, arguing that trust had been broken, that consequences were necessary. The family, once so close, was now divided, each of us nursing our own wounds. I felt isolated, caught in the middle. I loved them all, but I didn't know how to bridge the gap between them. Every attempt at comfort was met with resistance. Anna's anger, Mark's silence, Jamie's despair. I was losing them, one by one. That night, I lay awake, replaying the day's events over and over. The house was quiet, but my mind was loud with guilt and regret. I thought of Jamie, alone in his room, and wondered if he would ever forgive us. I thought of Anna, her face streaked with tears, and wondered if she would ever forgive herself. The next morning brought no relief. The tension in the house was palpable, every conversation strained and awkward. Anna avoided Jamie, her eyes red and swollen. Mark barely spoke, his anger simmering beneath the surface. Jamie kept to himself, his presence a constant reminder of the rift between us. I tried to keep the peace, to hold the family together, but it felt like trying to catch water in my hands. The harder I tried, the more it slipped away. Days passed, each one harder than the last. The family fractured further, old wounds reopening, new ones forming. Friends and relatives took sides, their opinions only deepening the divide. I felt more alone than ever, caught between my love for my family and my inability to fix what was broken. One evening, as I sat alone in the kitchen, Jamie appeared in the doorway. He looked smaller somehow, his eyes hollow and tired. "Grandma," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can I talk to you?" I nodded, my heart aching. He sat across from me, his hands trembling. "I'm sorry," he said, tears spilling down his cheeks. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." I reached across the table, taking his hands in mine. "I know, sweetheart. None of us did." He looked at me, his eyes searching. "Do you think they'll ever forgive me?" I squeezed his hands, wishing I could promise him the world. "It'll take time, but we're family. We'll get through this." He nodded, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. The damage had been done, and I didn't know if we could ever truly heal. As we sat together in the quiet, a new challenge emerged. Anna entered the kitchen, her face set with determination. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice steady. "Maybe we need help, all of us. Maybe we should talk to someone, a counselor, or a therapist. We can't keep going like this." Her words hung in the air, a fragile hope in the midst of our pain. For the first time since the confrontation, I saw a glimmer of possibility, a chance to mend what had been broken. Jamie looked at her, his eyes wide with surprise. "You'd do that, for me?" Anna nodded, her eyes shining with tears, "for all of us." In that moment, I realized that healing wouldn't be easy. There would be setbacks, and the scars would remain. But maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. As the night settled around us, I held on to that hope, fragile and precious. The fallout had left us battered and bruised, but we were still a family. And as long as we had each other, there was a chance for forgiveness and for healing. The days after Anna's suggestion passed in a haze of uncertainty. The house was quieter, but the silence was heavy, filled with the weight of things unsaid. I found myself moving through the motions, making tea, folding laundry, tidying up while my mind wandered restlessly. I was haunted by the memory of Jamie's trembling voice, Anna's tear-streaked face, and the way Mark's anger had filled the room like a storm. I knew I couldn't carry this alone. I needed someone to talk to, someone who could help me make sense of the chaos swirling inside me. So, on a chilly Thursday morning, I called my oldest friend, Evelyn. Evelyn and I had known each other since we were girls. We'd weathered marriages, births, deaths, and disappointments together. If anyone could help me find my footing, it was her. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and familiar. "Hello, love, you're up early." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Evelyn, do you have time for a cup of tea? I could use some company." "Of course," she said without hesitation. "Come over, I'll put the kettle on." Her house was a short walk away, and the fresh air did me good. The trees were shedding their leaves, the ground a patchwork of gold and red. I tried to focus on the beauty around me, but my thoughts kept circling back to my family. Evelyn greeted me at the door with a hug. She led me to the kitchen, where the table was already set with mugs and a plate of shortbread. I sat down, grateful for the comfort of her presence. We talked about small things at first, whether her garden, the latest book she was reading, but Evelyn knew me too well to let me hide for long. "All right," she said gently, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "Tell me what's really going on." The words spilled out of me in a rush. I told her everything: the phone call from Jamie, the confrontation, the arguments, the way the family had splintered. I told her about my guilt, my helplessness, my fear that we might never heal. Evelyn listened without interrupting, her eyes kind and understanding. When I finished, she sat back and let out a long breath. "Oh, my dear," she said softly, "you've been carrying so much." I nodded, tears pricking at my eyes. I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm failing them. I keep thinking about all the things I should have done differently." Evelyn shook her head. "You're not failing anyone. You're doing your best. Families go through hard times. What matters is that you're there for them, even when it's messy." I looked down at my hands, twisting the edge of my napkin. "But what if it's not enough? What if we can't fix this?" She leaned forward, her voice firm. "You can't fix everything, love. Sometimes all you can do is show up, listen, and love them through it. The rest, well, that's up to them." Her words settled over me like a balm. I realized how much I'd been trying to control, to hold everyone together by sheer force of will. Maybe it was time to let go, just a little, and trust that we'd find our way. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, sipping our tea. I felt lighter, as if sharing my burden had made it easier to bear. Before I left, Evelyn hugged me tightly. "You're stronger than you think," she whispered, "and you're not alone." On my way home, I thought about what she'd said. I'd always prided myself on being the glue that held the family together, but maybe it was time to let others help, to accept that I couldn't do it all. That evening, after dinner, I found myself searching online for local support groups. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, maybe a place to talk, maybe just to listen. I found a group for grandparents raising grandchildren, and another for families in crisis. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the mouse, before finally signing up for a meeting the following week. The support group met in the basement of a nearby church. The room was small and plain, but the people inside were warm and welcoming. We sat in a circle, sharing stories of heartbreak and hope. Some had lost children to addiction, others were raising grandchildren after tragedy. Each story was different, but the pain was familiar. When it was my turn to speak, I hesitated. My voice trembled as I told them about Jamie, about the confrontation, about the way our family had fractured. I spoke of my guilt, my fear, my longing for things to go back to the way they were. The group listened, nodding in understanding. One woman, her hair silver and her eyes bright, reached over and squeezed my hand. "You're not alone," she said. "We've all been there. It's hard, but it gets better. You just have to keep showing up." After the meeting, I lingered, talking with a few of the other grandparents. Their stories gave me hope. They'd survived things I could barely imagine, and yet they were still standing, still loving, still fighting for their families. Walking home that night, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in weeks. I realized that I didn't have to have all the answers. I just had to keep trying, keep loving, keep showing up. In the quiet of my own kitchen, I sat with a cup of tea and let myself reflect. I thought about my own life, the choices I'd made, the mistakes, the moments of joy and regret. I remembered the early years of my marriage, the struggles and the laughter, the way we'd built a life together from nothing. I thought about Anna as a little girl, her hand in mine, her trust in me. Absolute family, I realized, wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, even when things were hard. It was about forgiveness, about loving each other through the mess and the pain. It was about holding on, even when everything felt like it was falling apart. I thought about Jamie, about the courage it had taken for him to call me, to ask for help. I thought about Anna, her willingness to seek help for all of us. I thought about Mark, his anger masking his fear and love for his son. We were all hurting, all trying to find our way, but we were still a family. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. As I finished my tea, I made a promise to myself. I would keep showing up. I would keep loving them, even when it was hard. I would forgive myself for the things I couldn't change, and I would hold on to hope for the things I could. The road ahead would be long, and there would be more pain, more challenges. But I wasn't alone. I had Evelyn, I had the support group, and most of all, I had my family. And as I turned out the light and climbed the stairs to bed, I felt a quiet strength settle in my bones. Whatever came next, I would face it with love, with hope, and with the unbreakable bond of family. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, another secret came to light. The week after the support group, I clung to the fragile hope that things might finally settle. Anna had scheduled our first family counseling session, and Jamie seemed a little lighter, even managing a small smile at breakfast. Mark, though still distant, had started coming home earlier, eating dinner with us in silence. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. But peace, I was learning, was a fleeting thing. It started with a phone call again too early, again with that sense of dread. This time, it was the school. Jamie hadn't shown up for his morning classes. My heart pounded as I dialed his cell, but it went straight to voicemail. Anna's face turned ashen when I told her, and Mark's jaw clenched so tight I thought he might shatter his teeth. We searched the house, the yard, the neighborhood. No sign of him. Anna's hands shook as she called his friends, her voice growing more frantic with each unanswered call. Mark stormed out, muttering about irresponsibility and consequences, but I could see the fear in his eyes. Hours passed. The police were called. I tried to stay calm, to be the anchor, but inside I was unraveling. Every worst-case scenario played out in my mind. Had we pushed him too hard? Had he run away? Was he safe? When Jamie finally walked through the door, dusk was falling. His clothes were dirty, his eyes red. Anna rushed to him, relief and anger warring on her face. "Where have you been?" she cried, pulling him into a fierce hug. Jamie didn't answer. He just stood there, limp in her arms, staring at the floor. Mark's voice was sharp. "You can't just disappear, Jamie. Do you have any idea what you've put us through?" Jamie flinched, but still said nothing. I stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Jamie, sweetheart, please talk to us. We're worried." He looked up at me, and for a moment, I saw the little boy he used to be, lost, scared, desperate for comfort. But then his gaze hardened, and he pulled away. "I just needed to get out," he muttered. "I couldn't breathe in here." Anna's face crumpled. "We're trying, Jamie. We're all trying." He shook his head, tears spilling down his cheeks. "You don't understand. None of you do." He stormed upstairs, slamming his door so hard the walls rattled. The silence that followed was deafening. That night, as I lay awake, I replayed every moment, every word. I thought about the support group, about Evelyn's advice, about the promise I'd made to keep showing up. But what if showing up wasn't enough? What if I was losing him, too? The next morning, I found Jamie's door ajar. He was sitting on his bed, staring at his phone. I sat beside him, careful not to crowd him. "Do you want to talk about it?" I asked softly. He shook his head, but after a long pause, he whispered, I'm sorry, Grandma. I can't handle it sometimes. Everything feels too much. I wrapped my arm around him, holding him close. You don't have to handle it alone, Jamie. We're here for you. I'm here. He nodded, but I could feel the distance between us, a chasm I didn't know how to cross. Later that day, as Anna and I cleaned the kitchen, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her brow furrowing. It's from the school, she said, her voice tight. She listened for a moment, her face growing paler with each word. When she hung up, she turned to me, her hands trembling. They found something in Jamie's locker, she whispered. A bottle of pills they think he might be using. The world tilted beneath my feet. I gripped the counter, trying to steady myself. No, I breathed. Not Jamie. Anna's eyes filled with tears. What if we've already lost him, Mom? What if we're too late? I pulled her into my arms, holding her as she sobbed. My mind raced, searching for answers, for hope. Had we missed the signs? Had our own pain blinded us to his? That evening, we confronted Jamie. He sat at the kitchen table, his face closed, his arms folded tight across his chest. Jamie, Anna said, her voice trembling, the school called. They found pills in your locker. Please, tell us the truth. He stared at the table, silent. Mark's voice was harsh. Are you using, Jamie? Is that what this is about? Jamie's jaw clenched. They're not mine, he said finally, his voice barely audible. I was holding them for someone else. Anna's eyes searched his face. Jamie, please. We need to know the truth. We can help you, but only if you're honest. He looked up, his eyes shining with unshed tears. I swear, Grandma, I'm not using. I didn't know what else to do. He said he'd hurt me if I didn't help. A cold chill ran through me. Who, Jamie? Who threatened you? He shook his head, refusing to answer. Just when I thought I'd reached the limit of what I could bear, another secret surfaced. Anna's phone buzzed again, a message from a number she didn't recognize. She read it, her face draining of color. She handed me the phone, her hands shaking. The message was short, but it changed everything. If you want to keep your family safe, stay out of this. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Fear, sharper than anything I'd felt before, settled in my chest. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I realized we were only at the beginning. The message on Anna's phone haunted me through the night. I lay awake, the words burning behind my eyes. If you want to keep your family safe, stay out of this. I'd always believed that love and patience could heal any wound, but now I was facing something darker, something that threatened not just our hearts, but our safety. By morning, the house was tense and silent. Anna moved through the kitchen like a ghost, her eyes rimmed red. Mark sat at the table, staring at his coffee, his jaw set. Jamie hadn't come down at all. I could feel the fear in the air, thick and suffocating. I knew I couldn't let this go. I couldn't let fear dictate our lives. I had to protect my family, no matter the cost. After breakfast, I found Jamie in his room, curled up on his bed, headphones on. I sat beside him, waiting until he noticed me. He pulled off his headphones, his eyes wary. Grandma, his voice was small, uncertain. I took his hand in mine. Jamie, I need you to tell me the truth, all of it. I know you're scared, but we can't help you if you keep hiding. He looked away, his shoulders trembling. I can't, he said. He'd hurt you, all of you. I squeezed his hand. Who, Jamie? Who's threatening you? He shook his head, tears spilling down his cheeks. It's not just me. He knows where we live. He said if I told anyone, he'd come after you. I felt a surge of anger, hot, protective, fierce. Jamie, listen to me. You are not alone. We are stronger than you think, but we have to face this together. Please, trust me. He looked at me, searching my face for something, strength, maybe, or hope. His name is Tyler. He's older. He started hanging around school a few months ago. He gives kids pills, makes them sell for him. If they say no, he threatens them. He threatened me. I pulled him into my arms, holding him tight as he sobbed. Thank you for telling me, sweetheart. We'll get through this. I promise. Downstairs, I gathered Anna and Mark. I told them everything Jamie had said. Anna's face went pale, but Mark's eyes blazed with anger. We have to call the police, he said. Anna shook her head, fear in her voice. What if it makes things worse? What if he really does come after us? I stood, my hands trembling but my voice steady. We can't let fear control us. Jamie did the right thing by telling us. Now we have to do the right thing. Mark nodded, his anger shifting to resolve. I'll call. As Mark spoke to the police, I sat with Anna, holding her hand. We're doing the right thing, I whispered. We have to protect Jamie. We have to protect all of us. The police arrived quickly, their presence both reassuring and terrifying. Jamie told them everything, his voice shaking but clear. They took notes, asked questions, promised to keep us safe. They said they'd been watching Tyler for months, that Jamie's testimony could help them finally make an arrest. After they left, the house felt emptier, but lighter, too. The secret was out. The fear was still there, but it was no longer hidden in the shadows. That night, as I sat alone in the living room, I let myself feel everything: fear, relief, anger, hope. I thought about all the choices that had led us here, all the moments I'd doubted myself, all the times I'd wondered if I was strong enough. I thought about my own mother, how she'd faced her own storms with quiet courage. I remembered the sacrifices she'd made, the way she'd always put family first. I realized, with a sudden clarity, that I was more like her than I'd ever known. Anna joined me, sitting quietly at my side. For a long time, we said nothing. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Mom, I'm scared. I took her hand, squeezing it gently. So am I, but we're not alone. We have each other. That's what matters. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. The next day, the police called. They'd arrested Tyler. They wanted Jamie to come in and make a statement. Anna and Mark were nervous, but I insisted on going with him. At the station, Jamie sat beside me, his hand shaking. I wrapped my arm around him, whispering words of encouragement. When the officer asked him to tell his story, Jamie looked at me, and I nodded. He spoke, his voice trembling but strong. He told them everything: how Tyler had threatened him, how he'd been too scared to say anything, how he'd finally told the truth. When he finished, the officer smiled kindly. You did the right thing, Jamie. You're very brave. On the way home, Jamie was quiet. I could see the weight lifting from his shoulders, but I knew it would take time for the scars to heal. That evening, as we sat around the dinner table, I looked at my family: Anna, Mark, Jamie. We were battered, bruised, but still together. Mark cleared his throat, his voice rough. I'm sorry, Jamie. I should have listened. I should have been there for you. Jamie looked up, his eyes shining. It's okay, Dad. I was scared, too. Anna reached across the table, taking both their hands. We're going to get through this, together. I watched them, my heart full. I realized that this was what family meant. Not perfection, not always knowing the right thing to do, but showing up, loving each other, even when it was hard. After dinner, Jamie came to find me. He sat beside me on the porch, the cool night air wrapping around us. Grandma, he said, his voice soft. Thank you, for believing in me, for not giving up. I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. I'll never give up on you, Jamie. That's what grandmas do. He leaned his head on my shoulder, and for a moment everything felt right. But as the stars blinked overhead, I couldn't help but wonder what the future would hold. The danger had passed, but the wounds were still fresh. There would be more challenges, more storms, but I knew, deep in my bones, that we would face them together. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I let myself reflect. I thought about the choices I'd made, the times I'd been strong, the times I'd faltered. I thought about the meaning of family, about the sacrifices we make for those we love. I realized that love isn't always easy. It's messy, complicated, sometimes painful, but it's also the most powerful force in the world. It's what gives us the strength to stand up, to fight for what matters, to protect those we love. I thought about Jamie, about the courage it had taken for him to tell the truth, I thought about Anna and Mark, about the way they'd come together in the end. I thought about myself, about the strength I'd found when I needed it most. As I drifted off to sleep, I made a promise to myself, to my family, to the future. I would keep fighting, I would keep loving, I would keep showing up, no matter what, because that's what family does. The next morning, the sun rose bright and clear. Jamie came down to breakfast, a shy smile on his face. Anna and Mark sat together, their hands entwined. The air felt lighter, the house warmer. We ate together, laughing for the first time in what felt like forever. The scars were still there, but they were healing. We were healing. As I watched my family, I felt a surge of pride. We had faced the darkness and come through stronger. We had found our way back to each other. And as I looked at Jamie, I knew that no matter what the future held, we would face it together, because love, messy, complicated, beautiful love, was enough. The days after Tyler's arrest passed in a gentle hush, as if the whole house was exhaling after holding its breath for too long. The police assured us that Jamie's statement had helped their case, and that Tyler would not be coming near our family again. Still, the shadows of fear lingered at the edges of our lives, but they no longer ruled us. Jamie was quieter, but there was a new steadiness in him. He started attending counseling, sometimes with Anna and Mark, sometimes alone. I watched him from the kitchen window as he raked leaves in the yard, his movements slow but purposeful. He was healing, in his own time, in his own way. Anna and Mark, too, were changed. Their arguments grew less frequent, replaced by long, honest conversations late into the night. Sometimes I'd hear them laughing softly, a sound I hadn't realized I'd missed. They were learning to forgive each other and themselves. As for me, I found myself reflecting on everything we'd been through. I thought about the fear that had gripped me, the helplessness, the anger. I thought about the choices I'd made, the risks I'd taken, and the love that had carried me through. I realized I was stronger than I'd ever given myself credit for. One afternoon, Evelyn came by with a basket of scones. We sat on the porch, the autumn sun warm on our faces. She listened as I told her about the arrest, the counseling, the slow mending of our family. "You did it, you know," she said, squeezing my hand. "You held them together." I shook my head, smiling. "I just kept showing up, even when I was scared, even when I didn't know what to do." She nodded. "That's what courage looks like." I let her words settle in my heart. For so long, I'd measured myself by what I could fix, by how well I could protect the people I loved. But maybe real strength was in the showing up, in the loving, in the refusing to give up even when the outcome was uncertain. That evening, Jamie found me in the garden, where I was pulling the last of the summer weeds. He knelt beside me, his hands in the dirt. "Grandma," he said, "I'm sorry for everything, for scaring you, for not telling you sooner." I brushed the hair from his forehead, just as I had when he was small. "You don't have to be sorry, Jamie. You were scared. We all were. But you were brave, too. You told the truth, even when it was hard." He looked at me, his eyes clear. "I want to do better. I want to be better." I smiled, feeling a deep, quiet pride. "You already are." We worked side by side in the fading light, the silence between us comfortable and full. I realized then that our family would never be the same as it was before. We were change-scarred, yes, but also stronger, more honest, more connected. Later, Anna joined us, her arms wrapped around herself. She looked at Jamie, then at me. "I'm sorry, Mom," she said softly, "for everything, for not listening, for letting my fear get in the way." I stood and hugged her, holding her tight. We all did our best. That's all we can do. Mark came out, too, and for a moment, the four of us stood together in the garden, the last rays of sunlight painting us gold. There were no grand declarations, no promises that everything would be perfect from now on, but there was love and forgiveness, and the quiet certainty that we would face whatever came next together. As the days grew shorter and the air turned crisp, I found a new peace settling in my heart. I returned to my support group, sharing our story with others who understood. I found comfort in their words, and in the knowledge that I was not alone. I also found myself reaching out more to friends, to neighbors, to the people I'd once been too busy or too proud to lean on. I realized that asking for help was not a weakness, but a strength. It was a way of saying, I matter, too. One evening, as I sat by the window with a cup of tea, I watched Jamie and Anna playing cards at the kitchen table. Mark was reading the newspaper, his glasses perched on his nose. The house was filled with the soft sounds of laughter and conversation. I thought about the journey we'd taken, the fear, the secrets, the pain. I thought about the choices I'd made, the risks I'd taken, the love that had carried us through. I realized that, for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. I knew there would be more challenges ahead. Life was never simple, never easy, but I also knew that I was ready. I was stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than I'd ever been. As the sun set and the house grew quiet, I whispered a silent thank you to my family, to my friends, to the woman I'd become. I had found closure, not in the absence of pain, but in the presence of love. I had found peace, not in perfection, but in acceptance. And as I turned out the light and climbed the stairs to bed, I carried that peace with me, a quiet strength, a gentle hope, a promise to keep showing up, no matter what, because that's what family does, and that's who I am. Months slipped by, and the sharp edges of our ordeal softened into memory. The house, once echoing with tension and fear, now hummed with a quieter, steadier energy. Life didn't return to what it was before, how could it? But it found a new rhythm, one shaped by everything we'd endured and everything we'd learned. Jamie changed the most. He still had hard days, but the shadows in his eyes faded, replaced by a cautious optimism. He threw himself into his schoolwork, joined the art club, and even made a few new friends. Sometimes, I'd catch him sketching at the kitchen table, headphones on, lost in his own world. He started talking more about his dreams, his worries, even his mistakes. The walls he'd built around himself were coming down, brick by brick. Anna and Mark, too, found their way back to each other. Their marriage, once strained by blame and silence, grew stronger through honest conversation and shared vulnerability. They attended counseling together, learning to listen and forgive. I saw them rediscovering the small joys, cooking dinners side by side, sharing a quiet laugh over morning coffee, holding hands as they watched Jamie from the porch. They were no longer just surviving, they were healing. As for me, I felt the changes most in the quiet moments. I no longer woke in the night, gripped by fear. Instead, I found myself reflecting on the journey we took, Auntie Mae, the uncertainty, the courage it had demanded. I realized I was no longer just the caretaker, the fixer, the one who held everyone else together. I was a woman who had faced her own fears, who had learned to ask for help, who had discovered strength in vulnerability. I kept going to my support group, not because I was desperate, but because I wanted to give back. I listened to other stories, offered comfort, and shared my own hard-won wisdom. I learned that healing wasn't a destination, but a process, a series of small, everyday choices to keep moving forward, to keep loving, to keep hoping. One afternoon, Jamie came home with a certificate from school, had won first place in the art show. He handed it to me, his cheeks flushed with pride. I couldn't have done it without you, Grandma, he said, his voice soft. I hugged him, tears stinging my eyes. You did this, Jamie. You found your way. He smiled. And in that moment, I saw not just my grandson, but a young man growing into himself, resilient, creative, brave. Anna and I grew closer. We spent more time together, walking in the park, sharing stories over tea. She confided in me in ways she never had before, and I realized how much we'd both grown, how much we'd learned to trust each other, to lean on each other, to forgive. Mark, once so quick to anger, became gentler, more patient. He apologized for the things he'd said in fear, and I saw him working every day to be a better father and husband. Our family dinners became a place of laughter and connection, not tension and silence. The house itself seemed to breathe easier. There were still hard days, of course, moments when old fears resurfaced, when tempers flared or tears fell. But we faced them together, no longer hiding, no longer pretending. We had learned that it was okay to be imperfect, to be vulnerable, to ask for help. I found new purpose in these changes. I started volunteering at the community center, helping other families in crisis. I shared my story, hoping it might offer hope to someone else lost in the dark. I realized that my journey wasn't just about surviving, but about growing, about finding meaning in the struggle. Looking back, I saw how far we'd come. We were not the same family we'd been before the storm, but in many ways, we were stronger. We had learned to speak the truth, to forgive, to hold each other close when the world felt uncertain. Most of all, I learned to accept myself not as the perfect mother or grandmother, but as a woman who had done her best, who had loved fiercely, who had found strength in the face of fear. On quiet evenings, I would sit on the porch, watching the sun set over the trees, feeling a deep sense of peace. Jamie would join me sometimes, or Anna, or Mark. We didn't always talk about what had happened, but we didn't need to. The love between us was enough. In the aftermath, I found not just healing, but hope that whatever storms might come, we would weather them together. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift of all. If you're still with me, thank you for listening. I never imagined I'd be telling this story, let alone sharing it with others. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that we're all carrying something, some secret pain, some old wound, some hope for healing. Maybe you see yourself in my story, or maybe you see someone you love. Either way, I hope you'll take a moment to reflect with me. Both family isn't always easy. It's messy, complicated, and sometimes it hurts more than anything else in the world. But it's also where we find our deepest connections, our greatest joys, and if we're lucky, our truest selves. I used to think my job was to keep everyone safe, to hold the pieces together no matter what. I thought love meant sacrifice, silence, and never asking for help. But I was wrong. Love is honest. Love is vulnerable. Love is showing up, even when you're scared, even when you don't have all the answers. I learned that it's okay to admit you're struggling. It's okay to ask for help. In fact, it's necessary. We're not meant to carry our burdens alone. If you're facing something hard in your own family, please know this: you are not alone. There are people who care, people who will listen, people who have walked through the fire and come out the other side. Don't be afraid to reach out. A friend, a support group, a counselor, or even a neighbor. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say, "I need help." I also learned the importance of boundaries. For so long, I thought loving my family meant giving everything I had, even when it left me empty. But I've come to understand that boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges. They help us love each other better, more honestly, and with more respect. It's okay to say no. It's okay to take time for yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup. If you're a parent, a grandparent, or just someone who loves deeply, I hope you'll remember this. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all the answers. Your presence, your patience, your willingness to listen, that's what matters most. Sometimes, just sitting beside someone in their pain is the greatest gift you can give. Looking back, I see now that every struggle, every sleepless night, every tear shed was part of our journey. We didn't come through unscathed, but we came through together. We learned to forgive, to speak the truth, to hold each other close when the world felt uncertain. We learned that healing isn't a straight line, it's a winding path, full of setbacks and small victories. If you're in the middle of your own storm, please hold on. The pain won't last forever. There is hope, even when you can't see it. There is healing, even when it feels impossible. And there is love, always love, waiting for you on the other side. Take a moment, right now, to think about your own family. Who do you need to forgive? Who do you need to reach out to? What boundaries do you need to set, not just for them, but for yourself? It's never too late to start again, to have a hard conversation, to say I love you, or I'm sorry, or I need you. I'm not the same woman I was at the beginning of this story. I'm stronger, yes, but I'm also softer. I know now that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward in spite of it. I know that love isn't about fixing everything, it's about being there, no matter what. So, to you whoever you are, wherever you are, I offer this. Be gentle with yourself. Be honest with those you love. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to set boundaries. You are worthy of love, of healing, of peace. And remember, no matter how dark it gets, you are not alone. There is always hope. There is always a way forward. And there is always, always the possibility of a new beginning. Thank you for letting me share my story. I hope in some small way, it helps you find the courage to share yours. Now, I want to turn this over to you. Have you ever faced a family betrayal, or found yourself caught in the middle of a conflict you never saw coming? Have you ever felt the weight of secrets, or the fear of losing someone you love? Maybe you've struggled to set boundaries, or wondered if you were strong enough to hold your family together. If any of this sounds familiar, I want you to know you are not alone. Your story matters. Your voice matters. I invite you to share your experiences in the comments below. What challenges have you faced in your family? How did you find healing? Or what are you still searching for? Sometimes, just putting your story into words can be the first step toward understanding and healing. And you never know, your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Let's create a space where we can support each other without judgment. If you're comfortable, tell us, what's the hardest lesson you've learned about family? How have you found strength in difficult times? What advice would you give to someone going through a similar struggle? If you found comfort or hope in my story, please consider subscribing to this channel. I share real-life stories about family, resilience, and the power of connection best. I believe that when we open up, we help each other heal. By subscribing, you'll join a community of people who understand what it means to face life's hardest moments and come out stronger on the other side. And if you know someone who might need to hear this story, please share it with them. You never know whose life you might touch with a simple act of kindness. Before you go, take a moment to check in with yourself. Is there someone you need to reach out to today? Is there a conversation you've been putting off, or a boundary you need to set? Remember, it's never too late to start again, to ask for help, or to offer forgiveness. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for being part of this community. Your presence means more than you know. Together, we can break the silence, support one another, and remind each other that hope and healing are always possible. So, what's your story? I can't wait to read your comments below. And remember, no matter what you're facing, you are not alone. Subscribe, share, and let's keep this conversation going. We're in this together.